Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime Coaching. My name is Kevin and my business is Business by Design, where we help people advance their personal performance. Today we have an interesting guest on the show today. He is an integral coach and a specialist in leadership development, and also quite the creative, I must say. I've actually seen some of his creation. Please welcome to today's Lunchtime Coaching, Roeshdien Jaz. How are you doing, Roeshdien?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Kevin. Really grateful and privileged to be here to share and to learn. Yeah.
Fantastic, man. Thank you for taking some time out. I know, considering the times, we are all busy. But as you know, and as you've seen, Lunchtime Coaching is always about adding some value. But you have an interesting story. Please tell people about what you do and about what we're going to be talking about today.
Right. So I am a integral coach and a musician, singer, songwriter, recording artist, and I work in the corporate space as well as a leadership development specialist in terms of coaching for peak performance. And I don't like to say SME because that word annoys me because nobody's an expert and this is not a projection. But I am a subject matter practitioner specifically in two fundamental areas, which is emotional intelligence, which I believe, and we're going to speak more about demystifying that from my perspective today, EQ and coaching for peak performance.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think especially when someone's passionate about it and they have a drive for it, it's always nice to hear their version of it. And because I've chatted to a few people today, and a lot of people know about information. And what I'm finding a lot, even in coaching sessions, is a lot of people know about stuff, but they just don't take action. And I see, part of what you write here is do not get stuck on autopilot. Tell us why that is so, and why do you think people do that?
Okay, so just to create some context, given the fact that I am an integral coach, and from my perspective, integral from an academic perspective, my training is based on the work of Ken Wilber in terms of integral thinking and integral systems thinking, integral theory, and in a very, very simple, pragmatic, relatable way, integral thinking is about recognizing what has come before, squeezing out the light and recognizing the shadow, and then building on that and taking it to the next level. So I'm but merely a conduit and a vessel that has recognized certain patterns over the last couple of decades, given my passion in perpetuity for what science refers to as behavioralism or human nature. Yeah. And so basically, I'm going to share how EQ has saved my life. And I just want to create some immunization in the spirit of Marshall Mathers, aka Eminem 8 Mile, that this is not a projection. This is my personal testimony based on my personal journey and what I have recognized has had significant and profound impact on myself. And when I say self, I refer to, as Stephen Covey says, heart, mind, body, and spirit. And so it's a privilege to be able to share that. This is not a religion. I'm not looking for converts. But I am definitely hoping the fundamental intention is just to impact one soul in a way that I've recognized my life has been affected by demystifying this topic called emotional intelligence that I feel, based on my observation, is disproportionately nuanced. And there's not enough conversation unpeeling the onion to the next level. There's an incredible amount of beautiful conversation, but it's very peripheral. It's very, sort of manage your emotions and empathy and compassion. That's fantastic. And that's also only one layer. You know what I mean? And I think it's beautiful. I'm inviting people into this conversation, whoever gets to be touched by this conversation, so we can take it to the next level so it can continue to evolve. You know what I mean? But EQ saved my life. And yeah.
And that's exactly what I love the way that you're so expressive, and I think it's an art form. It's a beautiful art form, the way that you express yourself. But on that note, please tell us, how did EQ save your life?
Okay, cool. So if it isn't evident already, one of my inspirations is Stephen Covey, rest his soul, author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And so I'm going to begin with the end in mind. because I know Kevin said to me last week he wants me to give people, and I'm very, very execution orientated. I'm very pragmatic. So this mindset, in the words of Gary Vee, mindset and execution. So I'm going to begin with the end in mind. What I'd like people to take away from this session is understanding what the EQ matrix is, either an affirmation, either a reminder, or either a paradigm shift in that regard, and some practical take-home tips to support you in your development in terms of building self-awareness. And in the words of the late MJ, Michael Jackson, it starts with the one in the mirror. And so what I'd like you to take away is, whenever you think of EQ as of today, and they say the subconscious mind loves symbols, metaphors, analogies, etc. So I want you to think of this symbol over here: self-social, self-social, self-social. Number two, the EQ matrix, which I'm going to unpack shortly, which in a nutshell is self-awareness. I've actually did a little visual over here for you. It's self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. And we'll demystify that shortly. And then there's a powerful tool, which you may be aware of. It's very popular, I think, or underratedly popular in the world of coaching, which is doing a PIES check-in daily. And the PIES is an acronym, and I'm going to invite Kevin, with his permission, to do
Yeah.
a PIES check-in with me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to model the behavior. I do this once a day. And as you know, this is the digital age. So you can literally set yourself on this little mobile device and set a reminder to do a PIES check-in.
Yeah.
And it's particularly effective, especially when you're feeling overwhelmed, especially when you're feeling stressed out, given all the current dynamics that we are experiencing with the lockdown and COVID, etc. So anyway, at the risk of being superfluous, the PIES check-in is an acronym. So I'm going to model the behavior, and then I'm going to invite Kevin to participate if he wants to. So physically, you are basically doing a physiological somatic check-in with yourself. So am I experiencing any tension anywhere in my body right now? So imagine going to the airport, walking through that scanner, and you're scanning from head to toe. So I've got a little bit of tension in my neck, been working late on the laptop last night. The I is for intellectual. What am I thinking about right now? I'm thinking about how grateful I am to connect with Kevin and the opportunity to share and hopefully just impact one soul. The E is for emotional, and I know this is a gross generalization, but men tend to struggle with this one. How am I feeling right now? I'm feeling excited. I'm also feeling a little bit anxious because I've got some reports to send off. And then last but certainly not least, the S is for spiritual. Now, spiritual is open to interpretation depending on your belief systems and whatever, So in this context specifically, it is bringing it back to gratitude. So what am I incredibly grateful for in my life right now? And one of my favorite sayings is, no matter how flat you roll a roti or a pancake, there will fundamentally always be two sides. Energy goes where attention, energy flows where attention goes. So what am I grateful for? Grateful for this opportunity to connect with Kevin. Grateful to be a conduit. Grateful to share and learn. Grateful to wake up another day. Grateful for my parents and my family. So that's an example, everyone, of a PIES check-in. So you get a long Market Street, if you live in Cape Town, you get a long Market Street PIES check-in, and you get a short Market Street PIES check-in, all depending on what time you have available. The long Market Street one is where I literally take a pen and paper or a Word document, and I unpack these acronyms a little bit more to elevate my awareness of self. And with that awareness, I can draw it down into self-management and do something about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's just the long and the short of a PIES check-in. I'm going to give Kevin an opportunity if he wants to do a little bit of a PIES check-in quickly.
Yeah, I just, while you were doing it, I was like following it, and physically, I also got some tension. I had an incredibly busy day, so physically, I'm aware of that. No headaches, luckily, so I'm happy with that. Intellectually, I've got a lot of things planned and happening all at the same time. So it's a lot of building awareness and really getting my brain on board with what needs to happen next. Emotionally, I've had some trauma happen in the last week, so I'm bagging that as we go along. I've unfortunately lost my dad recently.
Sympathy, yeah. Okay.
Thank you. So but you know, I deal with that and bag that emotion and work through that. So but you know, work, because I love what I do, and you know, my dad was very proud of the fact that I did what I did. So you know, I keep doing it, and I do it ferociously. I would like to think, and spiritually, I think connected to that, I think it also weighs. It weighs a bit on me, and I need to this weekend again just take some time to really get my brain on board with what that means and how that's affecting me. You know, and have a bit of self chat and self conversation with myself. Yeah, I think that's where I'm at currently. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Kev.
Thank you. Dennis, about this, how EQ changed your life? That's my stuff. I'm like, I want to know.
Gotcha.
You know, I think storytelling, and as I can tell from how you relay information, it really does create a narrative for people to go on a journey with them. And you know, when you have that storytelling way of sharing information, people just kind of suck it in and they're like, oh yeah, I want to know more. So tell us that story, because I'd love to know how this really changed your life.
Awesome. So 2 decades ago, I've always been very, very passionate about human behavior. I had the privilege of studying business, and I'll never forget, one of my favorite subjects was consumer and buyer behavior when I was doing marketing. And then I started to recognize that I have an affinity towards wanting to understand human behavior more. And then fast forward a bit more, I was privileged to get a scholarship in university to pursue coaching studies at the Integral Coaching Center in Berkeley, and also a registered practitioner member with Comensa. And so that's just some academic context. But I always felt, you know, like I used to do lots of in-house motivational talks and stuff in corporate 2 decades ago, and they'd always use me to do that, you know. But I always felt that there's something a bit more sustainable that I'd like to do in terms of walking a journey. And you alluded to that earlier on, walking a journey with somebody. And you know, when you start reflecting and introspecting, and you realize there's something missing over here, you know, and you hear so many, you know, people coming out, you know, with a flag, you know, I'm a life coach, I'm 25 years old, you know, and it really comes with experience. And I mean, I know I look young, but I'm 42, I'll be 43 next year. On the 26th of September 2012, I was diagnosed with colon cancer. 3 major surgeries, 8 rounds of chemotherapy, and an ileostomy bag attached to the right side of my tummy for 8 months while on chemotherapy. With God's grace and mercy, I'm really grateful to still be here. I profoundly believe that I don't necessarily, and my therapist debates this with me, I don't necessarily feel I overcame or won anything. I just feel like I've been blessed with a bit more time to recognize who I am, why I'm here, and what my mission is. And my mission right now is to use the time that I have left, whether it's through my music, my coaching, or my workshops, to help people become a bit more aware of how they are showing up in the world. So back to the story in terms of how it preserved my life. I lost a friend recently in January who was my cancer mentor. Rest his soul, Lance. His funeral was now, I think, in January. And when I got diagnosed, I'll never forget, at the hospital, they said to me, there's this young, precious young soul who's younger than me. I was 34 at the time. I think he was 26. And I could be wrong, but I know he was younger than me. And he had gone through the entire process 6 months prior to me. So, you know, like COVID, everyone is hit with extreme turbulence and uncertainty. The exact same thing happens, you know, when you get to face your mortality. And I had the privilege of having a mentor, you know, and so he would basically share the nuts and bolts of what's coming, despite him going through the same process. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so it was very challenging. And here's the interesting thing. So I mean, these conversations are very nuanced, you know, so one could go into a spiritual conversation, and so I'm not really going to go into that, but I believe everyone has a start date and everybody has a rebirth date or a transcending date, or however you want to create that narrative, you know, depending on your spirituality. So, but from a coaching perspective, I've used this gift that Lance gave me and many others as part of my thesis, as a case study, and as an integral thinker, which is one that recognizes the patterns, squeezes out the light of the patterns, recognizes the shadow, and then include and transcend and takes it to a next level. So the symptoms I had and Lance had was blood in our output. Lance, for whatever reason, I don't have all the context, ignored his or never, for some reason, never sort of executed on exploring what the symptoms were about. You know what I mean? And like I said, I don't have all the context, and context is very important. I'm just using it as an example. But with me, I had blood in my output for about 4 months, and because of my coaching journey and my level of self-awareness, and I think perfection doesn't exist, but we do have certainly do have a capacity to expand in consciousness, and with that consciousness you can drop down and integrate, which is exactly what I did. I went to 4 different GPs. All of them said to me, I'm way too young. This is cancer that you get in your 50s, 55. And even the 4th one, who's my family doctor, said the same thing, put me on a fiber supplement. And I'll never forget, being a Muslim, it was the month of Ramadan, and we were fasting. He said to me, Rush, here's a fiber supplement. If you're still experiencing the blood in the output, I want you to come back, and I'm going to set an appointment so we can have a colonoscopy done and a scope done, which is what happened. Evidently, I went and they discovered a tumor 6 millimeters up from my colon at the bottom. And this year will be the 8th year. So I go for annual checkups. I just had my checkup now, CT scans, and with my oncologist, and with God's grace, everything is still clear. And it's like I get a little bit emotional when I talk about it, because Lance, bless his soul, got called home, and I came home, which is very conflicting. And so in any event, and it was really a challenging time, because during that same time, apart from the dynamics with me and Lance, a colleague of mine in his 50s, the same time I was diagnosed, passed away from the same cancer. So in that same week I got my diagnosis, a colleague of mine in his 50s passed away. So it was a lot going on at the same time. You know what I mean? And so basically, when I say EQ saved my life, it was my ability to recognize what was going on for me. And now we keep the PIES checking in the back of our mind as well. What was going on for me from a physiological perspective, and then dropping down into integration and executing by actually going to see 4 different GPs, if that makes sense, if you can connect the dots. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've got another example, rest his soul, my sister's best friend's brother, also got called home, rest his soul, about 3 years ago, had exactly the same symptoms, same age as myself, and ignored the blood in the output for about 3.5 years, 3 months, and he got called home. And like I said, from a spiritual perspective, when it's your time, it's your time. I like to use this, with God's grace, as case studies to inspire light, courage, hope, from these theses, as I call it. And so those are the 2 polarities. So this is just an example of the elevated awareness that I had, and the ability to drop down into self-management and execute it. And in the social space, I had the support of the doctors, the therapists, the oncologists, and whatever, and that drops down to relationship management.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so the whole thing connects together very synergistically. And you'll notice in the EQ matrix of a year, on this side of a year, it says this is the I space in terms of self-awareness. And over here, you'll see it's the we/it space. So what do I mean by that? This is other people like you and I that have values. And you'll notice I put Maslow there, Stephen Covey, Tony Robbins, just to give you some perspective in terms of understanding human nature from a Maslow perspective. Tony Robbins' 6 basic human needs. It's all on Google.
Yeah.
Covey's 4 birthrights. Heart, mind, body, spirit, to live, to love, to learn, to leave a legacy. And then the other half, which is not spoken also enough about, is that social awareness is divided into 2 fundamental parts. There's the social space, as in other human beings, and it's also the it space, which is systems, processes. For example, let's use COVID as a case study. So you've got You've got how we need to become aware of how we're showing up at the moment, wearing our masks,
Yeah.
social distancing. So that's self-management, right? We're hoping that others in the social space are going to do the same, right? So we can manage relationship with each other. And then there are also systems and processes and legislation and economics and all sorts of other nuances that are inherently impacted by this COVID, you know?
Yeah.
But if I were to summarize EQ into one sentence in terms of why I think, or what its fundamental purpose is, it's relationship management, relationship with self, other, and it.
Yeah.
So if Roeshdien and Kevin have an elevated awareness on their hard drive, the probability of them dropping down into execution or integration is significantly higher. If they have an awareness of other people that shares the same basic human needs, it helps them manage that relationship together, whether it's in a business capacity, relationship capacity, personal capacity. And if they have an awareness of systems and processes and economics and all those other nuances, they can also enhance those relationships depending on what the fundamental intention is for the relationship, whether it's a business relationship, an intimate relationship, a personal relationship. But
Yeah.
fundamentally, the long and the short of it is, from my perspective, EQ is about relationship management, enhancing your relationship with self, other, and it, and showing up with awareness, and with awareness, executing on the awareness. And we all know the definition of insanity. We do the same thing over and over, and we expect a different result. So that's basically a bit of context around EQ and how it impacted my journey.
I that's an amazing, it's an amazing story, and how you put that together and how you share that message is so beautiful. I think it's courageous to be able to share what you've been through, and how you've taken it upon yourself, and to really understand where you're at. And I think a lot of the time, when people get ill, and my mom actually passed away from cancer, so I know how by being in observation of what cancer does to people, but also being part of that environment, it's a horrible thing to have to go through. And there's never really something you can say to kind of empathize until you're in that position. But I thank you for that. That's such a beautiful message that you have. One of the things I want you to sort of touch on, because it's part of the information we've chatted about and shared. Tell us about autopilot. I think it's the self-management, the self-assessment, the awareness, and how that influences your systems and your relationships. And I think there are so many people at the moment, because of circumstances, but also just in general life, that they just kind of live on autopilot. But give us your understanding about this, and why that is such a debilitator, and why it really doesn't help us get to where we want to go by being that person, or being in that zone, or that mode.
Right. So when I say I'm on a mission to help to create a safe space for other human beings to switch off autopilot, and I'm going to allude to one of the awesome videos that I watched, Kev, that you share amongst your many awesome videos. One with Greg, I think his name was Greg from SMI.
Yeah.
And we met at Toastmasters like 2 decades ago, Calvin Grove Club.
Oh, wow.
And Greg spoke about neuroplasticity, and I really want to invite people to Google that, because that's also extremely nuanced, and I'm just going to share my perspective on it. But neuroplasticity is the ability for the brain to recognize initial sort of patterns, software, conditioning, etc., and more specifically, the brain's ability to restructure, reprogram, and adapt, once you recognize some of the limiting patterns or limiting beliefs or limiting values, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so what do I mean by switching off autopilot is, now I'm going to quote Dr. Phil, you can't change something that you don't recognize first. You know what I mean? And so all I'm trying to do today, and like I said, I'm a conduit, so I love honoring the people that inspire me, whether it's Kavi or Phil or Robbins or whoever, Another thing that's very important is David Kolb Also, another guy, Google him as well. He calls it the cycle of learning. And I always share this up front whenever I start a workshop or coaching session, is
Yeah.
that the cycle of learning is you have a concrete experience, you go away and you reflect on that experience, then you move into the next stage, which is conceptualizing, right? Connecting the dots, etc. Then the next stage is, and it's sort of circular. Then the next stage is active experimentation. So now you want to have a bit of fun with this EQ thing, and then you're ready for the next concrete experience. And I profoundly believe that everything in life has light and shadow. So what do I mean by that? Every overdone strength has a shadow. If you're only working upper body in the gym, and I'm sure, Kim, maybe you've seen this in the world,
Yeah.
these precious souls that are Johnny Bravo, but they can't go up one flight of stairs, and they're like, and then the polarity of that is you get another group of precious souls that are comrades marathon runners, and the lower body is like highly defined and super powerful, but the upper body is not necessarily as sort of nurtured. And
Yeah.
that's not a judgment, it's just an observation. The moral of the story is every overdone strength has a shadow. If I focus too much on being a prolific public speaker,
Mm.
a potential shadow may emerge there that I may be a terrible listener, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So we all have these muscles, I'm not reinventing the wheel here, we all have biceps, we all have triceps, we all have quads, etc. All I'm trying to do is take a flash drive, which we all know what a flash drive is, right? Recognize what are some of the applications that you currently have on your flash drive, and how it's impacting you, heart, mind, body, and spirit. And once you recognize what it is and whether it's working or not, you're then in a position, because of your elevated consciousness in divine time, to
Yeah.
drop down and do something different. And we all know Sir Isaac Newton's third law of motion. For every action, there's a reaction. You know what I mean? And so when I say switch off autopilot, is A, recognize what EQ is about. B, recognize that EQ is disproportionately nuanced. It's not only just about understanding emotions, that's a part of it. But as you can see, it's very nuanced. And it's that depth of nuance that impacted my life. And so now I'm on a mission to invite more people into this conversation of unpacking how powerful EQ is, and why, in my belief, it is going to have to be the new currency for sustainability on both a micro and a macro perspective in terms of human beings. I mean, you can even use this and as a thesis in terms of what's happening on a macro level at the moment with COVID, right?
Yeah.
If the universe was a human being, you're going to look at how self-aware is humanity at the moment, right?
There's been an awareness rise of note, right?
Needless to say. So
Yeah.
are we in a position right now, depending on the planet's level of consciousness, if we're going macro here at scale, to recognize what our values and our current behaviors are, and whether it's working for us or not, right? Are we able to recognize how it's affecting those around us as well? Whether it's the planet, precious species, Mother Nature, etc. Are we able to recognize the existing systems, whether it's economic, legislative, compliance, etc.? Are they working for us? And what is the current reality in terms of how we are able to manage these relationships with ourselves and the planet, and vice versa?
Yeah.
And I love the way Tony Robbins speaks about a class one experience, and I'm only going to share the class one because there's class two and class three, but I'm mindful of the time.
Yeah.
And I love using this methodology by Tony. And by the way, I hope Tony gets to hear this one day if it's in God's plan, but Tony Robbins was the one that inspired me to go for 4 different checkups with 4 different GPs. He said, I'll never forget, I bought the Get the Edge program 20 years ago. It's still here. He said, whenever you're facing something severe in terms of from a health perspective, any ailment, right? Um, wait, I'm getting confused. Sorry. There's a little thing I learned in the chemo room. Let me share that first. They say in the chemo room that anything that lingers for more than 2 weeks, go check it out, Kevin. Now, when I heard that in the chemo room, I was grateful. At the same token, I thought to myself, why is that limited to the chemo room? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Why is that a value and belief system only in the chemo system? I think everybody should do that. Anything that lingers. So I'm a bit OCD. If I acknowledge that there's a pain or an ailment somewhere, I'll literally take my phone. I'll set a reminder for 2 to 3 weeks from now. If I got a pain in my groin or whatever, and it will remind me 3 weeks from now and ask myself, Kev, do you still have that pain? And if I still have it, I'm going to drop down into self-management and I'm going to go check it out.
Yeah.
The class one experience that I wanted to share with you, also inspired by Tony Robbins, is that he says, whenever we are faced with making a very, very significant, important, life-defining decision, now think about COVID, think about everything that's happening at the moment. If you can answer yes to the following 3 fundamental questions, the probability of you making an informed decision goes significantly up. So what are the questions? A, is what I'm about to do, is what I'm about to execute good for me, heart, mind, body, and spirit? Is it good for the people around me, their heart, mind, body, and spirits? And is it in harmony with the greater good? And if you can answer yes to all 3 of those questions, the probability, and we're only speaking about probabilities right now, the probability significantly goes up. And big shout out to Tony Robbins, you know.
Yeah, I'm with you on Tony Robbins. I also have Get the Edge. I have his book on NLP. I use him as reference to, you know, when I do training around nonverbal communication. So yeah, it's I have a lot of respect for what he does and what he shares and the impact that he's had on people's lives. I mean, and he also does, you know, he's a big advocate for NLP, and that's really part of where my passion comes from about NLP, because when you really get to understand human behavior, as you know, you're kind of going, oh my goodness, you know, everybody should know this. Roeshdien, we don't have that much time left, and now we've had such a good conversation. I think we're going to have to invite you back to speak more. But in summary, on leaving some valuable information, I mean, everything you've shared is already so valuable. But in summary, what you've spoken about today, and then tell people where they can get hold of you if they want to know more or they want to invite you as a speaker. I mean, I think that would be a fantastic idea. So please summarize that for us and share more about where we can find you.
So you can find me. My website is Roeshdien Jaz with 1 Z, and I'm sure Kevin will share that information. You can go onto my website. All my information is there. You can get me on Facebook as well, Roeshdien Jaz, on LinkedIn as well, Roeshdien Jaz. And you're most welcome to engage with me, whether it's on a one-to-one basis for a coaching session or to invite me to do a talk or whatever. It would be an absolute privilege to be able to add value. And then last but not least, I want to take this opportunity, Kevin, to just acknowledge, affirm, and appreciate you as a conduit, as a vessel like me, purpose-driven, for the opportunity to share today. I'm incredibly grateful. Even if my philosophy is when I perform on stage or doing a talk, I have a very simple KPI and a metric. In Islam, we call it a niyat. A niyat is an intention. My intention is just to impact 1 soul a day. And if I can anything beyond that is a bonus. And then last but not least, to drop a few last jewels with Kevin before I leave, I live my life based on, remember I said, whenever you think of EQ, I want to invite you to remember, think of this, dancing in the paradoxical space: self-social, self-management, social awareness, relationship management. The second thing is, I want you to make EQ your new Ray-Bans once you start to get more hungry for it. And when you say Ray-Bans, I hope you're listening. I'm looking for that endorsement. I want you to imagine the EQ matrix inside each of these lenses. And so hopefully with God's grace in divine time, the more you get into the depth of the incredible disproportionate amount of value that exists in this lifesaver, you can start to look at the world from a new perspective, you know what I mean? And then last but not least, I live my life, and you'll notice on all my social media platforms, based on the following 4 hashtags. Act from awareness, mindfulness not perfection, balance not perfection, progress not perfection. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Kevin. Very grateful.
Roeshdien, thank you much. It was an absolute pleasure. Guys, if you want to know more, please check out all this information is going to be in the description box below. I want to leave you with some insight on the new lunchtime series we're starting. Myself and a colleague of mine are starting a lunchtime leadership happening every Monday at lunchtime. So check that out. And Roeshdien, if you've got some time in the next month or so, please join us. We'd love to have your insights on some leadership and giving some leadership advice. We'd love to have you back. Guys, more information on this will be on my website. It will be all over social media, so please check it out. Roeshdien, thank you so much. I really appreciate you and your time.
Thank you so much, Kev.
Have a wonderful day. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.